Be sure to check out my store for the stuff I use and templates at a low cost, and get my everything pack so you can have everything in my store at a reduced cost, less than $20 if you tweet it out.
What's up guys, Qehzy here bringing you guys another tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to create this 2D landscape header in Photoshop. You can also do this in Illustrator if you want, but I know my audience prefers Photoshop in a lot of things, so I thought I would do it there. It's a pretty simple concept. It takes a lot of time to get details and things right in this, so I'm going to show you the steps it takes to create this. The tutorial banner might look a little iffy because obviously I'm gonna not spend too much time on it because it's a tutorial, but anyway, let's just go ahead and jump right in. So first things first is you want to set up your template. So I'm in a Twitter header template, which is 3000 pixels by 1000 pixels, and we just have a black background here. But the first thing we want to do is fill the background with a solid color. So go down to adjustments, the half circle thing, solid color, and we're gonna do a color 00040E. So it's a very dark blue, and if you're doing something other than a night scene, so like I did mine at night, you can do yours at any time of the day. You might want to pick something else, but everything here is going to be focused around a night themed landscape. So click OK, and we are going to go ahead and set up the moon first. So what I'm going to do is hit Command H to bring out my guides. If you don't have any guides, you can press Command R to bring up the rulers and just drag them over, and they should click in the center. And you just want one down the center like that. And we're going to create a new layer. Go to the shape tools over here. It might be a rectangle or one of these shapes. Select ellipse tool, and we're going to select a color of light blue. So just go somewhere on the blues and just go all the way to the lighter side. Find something that you think works and click OK, and then we're going to click, hold Shift and Alt, and create a pretty decent sized circle like that. I'm just going to bring this up a bit, and we're going to first of all right click, rasterize that layer, double click, call it moon. And I recommend actually naming your layers on this because it will be a lot of layers by the time you're done. Double click on that, go to gradient overlay, simple black to white, black on the bottom, white on the top. Set to overlay 30% or somewhere in that range. You can play around with it however you want. Then you want to do an inner glow. Select a blue that's like in the middle here, like a lighter blue in the middle. So that's pretty good. Click OK, and then set that to normal. And we can increase the size here a bit. So maybe in the 20 range, 20 pixels. And the opacity around 40. So it's just a slight glow, and I'm actually going to bump down the opacity a little more. And yeah, that works. Make sure that this source is on edge, and then add an outer glow. Pick a similar blue, and that should work. Have that set to screen opacity around 40, and the size you can adjust. I'm going to go with 27. That should work. Click OK. And that is that moon layer. Now we want to add some moonlight across the sky. So to do that, we're going to duplicate the moon layer, right click, and we're actually just going to clear the layer style. And then we're going to duplicate it. So we have two duplicates of the original moon. Select both those duplicates, Command G to group them, and call it moon glow. And then open that up. Select one of them and go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and set that to around 30 pixels. And then we're gonna click OK, close the group, Command T, and expand that group just a little bit, like that. Set the group to overlay, and then we have a slight ring going around. Now you want to bring that below the moon layer and go ahead and duplicate that a couple more times and expand the size like so. Now you can do that as many times as you want. I just did it 3. And then I'm going to go to that original where the blue is really strong and bump down the opacity just a bit so it's not too overpowering. Something like that works. And then go to the original moon layer, create a new layer, get the ellipse tool again, this time switch it to a black, and then create a smaller circle on the moon, about half the size I'd say, I guess, like that. And then just move that to one of the corners, set it to overlay, duplicate it, and then just keep duplicating and resizing around the moon to create craters, something like what I'm doing now. And then you can duplicate ones occasionally and just size them down like that. And I'm just gonna do a couple more. Alright, something like that works. And I'm just going to go ahead and hide the guide for now. And we're going to select all of these ellipses that we just made. Press Alt and click on the bottom of each layer to make it a clipping mask. So ones on the edge here don't stick out. And then decrease the opacity just until it's like faded a little bit. You don't want it to be too much. It's kind of like more of a subtle detail, and I think that's about right, around 26%. And then we can just select everything so far, and that's a moon, and group that together and call it moon stuff. Now we want to go ahead and create a landscape, so we're going to create a new layer above the moon stuff. Go to the pen tool. That's not the pen tool. Here you go, and you just want to click and go up and down across the document. Now you might get this first try, it might take you 30 tries. For me, I got lucky on my first try and created a pretty good looking mountain range. So you just want to go ahead and do something like this. Just click and don't really try to create anything, kind of click around, go up and down, and don't really think about it. So something like that. And I usually start lower and go higher and then lower again, but like I said, you just need to click across, no real thinking, up and down, and create something you like. If you don't like it, you can right click, delete path, try again, and you could create as many different mountain ranges as you want. I'm just going to create the one, so I'll say I'm happy with this. Right click, fill path, select select contents and go to color, and select one of the bottom left corners where it's darkest, because we want to be using the darkest color we have on the page for now. And then click OK, right click, delete path, and there is a mountain range. So we want to name that Mountain 1 or whatever, and we're going to duplicate it once. And on this duplicated one, we're going to double click, color fill, select a color, and you should have these sort of rings from the moon glow. You want to select one of the blues inside, so maybe the second one or maybe the third one here, and actually have a little bit in between here. I think I'm going to choose that one. Click OK, right click, rasterize, and we'll name this guy Mountain 2. And just drag that down slightly, and we'll come back to that, and then duplicate Mountain 1 again, bring it to the top, call it Mountain 3, and bring that down below Mountain 2, probably even lower. And I'm going to bring Mountain 2 down lower, and you can see these are all the same mountain range, so it doesn't look too good, so we're going to have to change it up. Now, like I said earlier, you can make different mountain ranges, and that might look better, but I know a lot of you are like me and are fairly lazy and just want to edit the original one you created. So what you can do is select Mountain 2, Command T, right click, flip horizontal, and you can probably leave it at that, like that, but I'm just going to expand it out a little bit and rotate it like that. Cool. And then Mountain 3, we can kind of do the same thing. Maybe adjust a corner by pressing Command, doing something like that, expanding it out, and maybe rotating it. Yeah, something like that works. And keep in mind that these front pieces, like here and here, are obviously similar, but we're going to be covering up this space with text anyway, so just make sure the sides look a little bit different, which they do because it's wider, and that's a pretty good setup. Now we want to make a few slight adjustments, like bring the mountain down a little bit, and that will require a slight rotation again, and then bring mountain 2 down again, just so there's a little more space in between. That's pretty good. Now we want to go and find a tree set, a set of trees, and I actually have this saved somewhere. So if you search pine tree black on Google, you get a bunch of stuff like this, which you can use as a brush. I selected this one here, and if you just open that up, drag it into Photoshop, you can go to Edit, Define Brush Preset, name it, click OK. I already have this, so I won't do it again. But then you can come over to your brush tool, scroll all the way down, and boom, here you go. Here's a brush. And you just want to go ahead and add these trees into some of the spots on the landscape. So you could create it on its own layer, or just select the layer itself and work with it from there. So I'm going to start with mountain 1 here at the top. I'm going to click my color, select the same blue, and zoom in here a bit, and bring down the size using the bracket keys, and just start creating some trees. There we go, and we can do the same thing. I'll go mountain 3 first, since it's the same color. Maybe make it a little bigger because it's sort of technically closer, and we'll do a little more. And then finally we can do the middle mountain 2. Now we can also add some other details to go along with the trees. So if I bring this over real quick, you can see I have a wolf in front of the moon, I have this guy in the sky, a couple of other types of trees, and just some other little things along in this mountain. So you can just simply pen tool things and make them the same color as the mountain, or you can type in silhouette. So you got silhouette here. I'm going to type in wolf silhouette and show you how you go about adding something. So say I want this wolf here. I'm just going to view the image, and let me actually select my top layer here real quick, and I'm going to drag that wolf in, and it's going to be somewhere here, but we want to get rid of the white. So all I'm going to do is do the selection tool, click, select all the white pretty roughly, press delete, it's pretty good, and then Command U, bring the lightness all the way down so we don't have any of those white edges. Then you can double click color overlay and select the same color as the mountain, click OK, OK, and then we'll resize him and put him somewhere. So I'll put him over here to the right, kind of like on the edge here of the moon. That's pretty interesting. And of course you guys can add more. I'm just going to add that one for time's sake and keep going, but you can just keep adding little details throughout, and if you add more tree types, I think that really improves it too. But yeah, let's move on and finish the sky. Alright, so for the sky we want to add some stars and some other little details there. So you just want to go to the moon stuff group, create a new layer above that, and depending on what colors you use and stuff, you might want to do all this below the moon stuff folder, so you have the moon light kind of brightening everything up. But I'm just going to do it on top because I think that's what I did originally and what looked better. But anyway, you want to create that new layer and then select a white or some sort of light color. Go to the brush tool and just get a normal soft brush and set the size to about 7, 6, 7, 8. One of those three usually works. And then go to your brush settings. You don't have this little tab over to the right. You can just go to Window, Brush. And what we want to do is go brush tip shape, increase the spacing all the way, shape dynamics, increase the size jitter all the way, and then scattering, put the scatter all the way up. And you should have something like this down below. And what you want to do is just go around and click all through the sky, and be sure to overlap below or behind the mountains and behind the moon, just in case you end up moving stuff around. There we go. There's a nice easy sky, and we're gonna add some shooting stars as well. Let's name this layer real quick, stars. Create a new layer. You want the same soft brush, but you want to get rid of all those brush settings you just did. So let's bring that down, uncheck scattering, bring down the size jitter, and bring down the spacing. And really, I guess it actually doesn't matter. You don't have to do that because you just need to click once and get 1 point. And you could actually leave the scattering and everything on. So what I just told you is kind of bull, but whatever. Get that point, Command T, expand it out. Maybe make it slightly thinner, like so. Then get the eraser tool, make it fairly small, and just erase one side, like that. Maybe even a little more, like that. That works. We'll zoom back out here. Command T, rotate. And you can set this to overlay or leave it as white. I set mine all to overlay and had them very subtly in the background. And you can do something like that. Duplicate them a few times, move them around. Boom, there you go. Like I said though, you can leave them on normal if you want them to stand out a little bit. Maybe just bring down the opacity. I'm gonna leave mine on overlay. And boom, there is basically the background. But if you want to add just a little bit more detail, if this is too bland, you can just do a quick kind of burst effect in the background. So go to that moon stuff layer, create a new layer, zoom out, go to the shape tool again, but this time do custom shape, open up this tab here and look for this burst right next to the crosshairs, click that. You can bring up your guides again, click in the middle-ish of the moon, Shift Alt click, expand, make sure white is your color by the way. If you didn't select it in time, just click up here and select white. Right click, rasterize, call this burst, go to filter, distort, wave, and then increase the wavelength max to somewhere in the 300s or 400s and leave everything else alone. Click OK. You get this nice subtle kind of wave. It's not really subtle. Bring that below the moon stuff layer actually. Set it to overlay. And then go down here to layer mask. Click that. And then Command I. Everything should disappear. Go back to your brush tool and bring up the size. Make sure you have a soft brush. And if you didn't change your brush settings, now you want to change it back to the original. And now we want to bring this up and click once. Boom, there we go. Now this burst will fade into the background, and this is obviously a little too bright, so we're just going to decrease the opacity by a bit. And now we have like a cool subtle wave effect going on in the background that kind of just makes the sky a little more interesting. And now that is the completed background, and now we can move on to the text and everything else. So select everything we just did, minus the color fill, and group that, call it background. You could actually include the color fill, I just don't, in case you want to make any tweaks. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and do the text. So go over to the text tool, bring up the guides again, we want to make this centered. Click type in your text. Mine's going to be midnight. I'm using the font Baron New, I think that's how you say it. And I'm just going to bump up the size by a lot. Maybe not that much. 75 works, and actually I'll just Command T and bring it down because that's probably a little easier. Somewhere about there works. Command H to hide all those guides, and I'm gonna duplicate this text a while, and Command T, bring the size down, and bring that down, and that's just gonna be used later on, so you can hide that, bring it below, and we'll just work with this for now. So right click on that layer, go to warp text, and you can actually do any of these warps. I'm just gonna do an arc and make it maybe like +6. Yeah, very subtle arc. I think that looks good. Click OK, and now we're gonna make this 3D and kind of more interesting. So right click on it, go all the way down to new 3D extrusion from selected layer. Now if you're in older Photoshop, you may not have this capability, and depending on your computer you might not be able to do this, I'm not exactly sure. But you can make 3D text from scratch by just filling in the background. It takes a lot of time, but you can do it. But this is a lot easier, so I'm going to click that. Might take a little bit to get this window open, and you can see we have some 3D text. Now if you just click and drag up, you can change the orientation of this, and we want something sort of like this, kind of that it's raising up a little bit so we can see below the text. And you'll notice there might be some shadows there. You won't be able to see it in the background because the background's fairly dark, but it's on the text there a little bit, and we don't want that. So double click on infinite light, and where it says shadow, uncheck that, and now we just have the text itself. When you're done, you can close that tab, right click, and rasterize 3D. So now we just have this layer by itself, and this is where some time might have to be taken. What I did was got the pen tool, and where it is white, I went and traced that and filled it on its own layer. And I did that because if you just do the selection tool and copy and paste it or whatever, the edge is a little funky and the stroke looks a little weird. So you're going to want to get the pen tool, click, and just follow the white all the way around. And once you're done with that, say I just did a letter, you want to right click, fill path, create a new layer, and then put the text there. Now for time's sake, I'm going to do it the easy way, and you're welcome to do it this way too, but it might be a little weird on the edges. But you can just click with the selection tool, hold shift, get all the white front of the text like that. Control C, Control V, or Command C, Command V, and boom, there's the text. But like I said, it's better to do it with the pen tool. I originally did it with the pen tool, but for time's sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to do it like that. And you can name this front, and you can name the midnight back, but I'll leave it as that for now. Now on this front text, we're going to double click, set it to actually color overlay first. And we want to do the same light blue we used on the moon, or something similar, maybe a little bit lighter. So like that. So you can see I went a little more white with it. Click OK, and depending on your color overlay, I notice sometimes the gradient overlay won't work when you do a color overlay. So you can just simply do the color overlay, right click, rasterize the layer style, and then do the gradient overlay, and yeah, that's much better. And I'm going to decrease the opacity of that overlay, and it should be similar to the moon overlay, but just slightly less opacity, like that. So 27 works, actually maybe even less. We'll go 19. And then you can do the same inner glow. This time I'd recommend doing white and setting it to overlay, and then decreasing the size, but then you can leave everything else the same. And you can also throw on an outer glow here and just make the opacity a little less. I think I'll do that. That works. And yeah, that's pretty good. We'll click OK. And now we're going to duplicate that front layer, name it stroke. And we're going to right click, clear layer style. Make sure you clear, don't rasterize it, or else you'll still have the glow and some other things. But bring down the fill 100%, double click, stroke, and now you can kind of play around with the stroke. You could set it to different things, set it to overlay. If you did what I did with the selection tool, I would recommend setting it to overlay, maybe doing blacks and whites and grays. If you do what I'm about to do, it's going to look a little funky. Mine's going to look a little funky. And you can see why I suggested to pen tool it, because it's looking really weird. But I'm just going to do a light blue stroke, maybe this like a size 2. And I'm not going to reverse it. I'm going to have it from dark to light. I think I have that correct there. That works. And yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. And then we can just go ahead and do the back text, the behind text. So we're going to double click on that, go to color overlay, and we're going to set it to overlay and a blue. So I want it to be fairly dark but fairly blue, and I'm just going to mess around here till I get something I like. That's not bad. So this color is 0D4291. But like I said, you can play around with it. Click OK, right click, rasterize layer style, and then come back and double click again. And this time we are just gonna add some shadowing and things. So go to inner glow, and we're gonna set this to center, overlay, white, size you can mess around with. I'd recommend going somewhere in the 20s, looks pretty good, that works. Don't want that much of an opacity. I'll go 23, and then we want to go to inner shadow, and maybe my settings are 35%, opacity, multiply, distance we want 0, choke 0, and then size again you can mess around with, and maybe I'll bump the opacity up. Yeah, that works. And let's actually decrease the size to about 15ish. 16 works. And that just kind of darkens the text at the bottom here, or what would be the back of the text, I guess. And that's because we're going to have it on a surface, so there would be some shadows there, and that's what we kind of want as a look. And that's pretty good. We'll click OK and close that. So if I actually just show you the effect differences real quick, you can see it just brightens up the text like here and darkens it behind, which is what we want for the 3D look. Now we want to do that thing behind the text, so select all the text here except the one that's hidden, group that, call it text, and now we're going to do behind the text. So go on that layer, that text layer, and create a new layer there. You can actually bring that below, and now we're going to kind of from scratch create something behind this text. I'm going to zoom in here, get the pen tool, and at the back of this text here you can see this is where it would sit, like this angle here. So we want to go just to the left of that, click, and then start creating our shape. So I'm going to hold shift and go straight down just a bit, and then cut in on an angle like that. And let's go to the middle. Let me actually command H to bring this up, and we're gonna go maybe to here, slightly elevated and slightly on an arc like that. And I'm gonna press Alt, click, and then kind of create a little span here for some subtext, or not a span but like a little divot, or I don't know what to call it, but we're gonna go down like that, and then go to the middle here and like a slight arc again, maybe bring that up a bit. Perfect. And we can alt click and then go to the like top-ish middle of the text. So maybe right around here is where it would be, and then go about there is where it would end, and finish it off. I could probably bring this point in a bit, and I think I like that. That's pretty good. And we're just gonna right click, fill path, color, and we're gonna want this to be a little lighter so it's visible. So you can kind of select any blue. I think I'm gonna do this glow in here. Just use the eyedropper, get that, click OK, OK, right click, delete path, and I think that's a pretty good color. We might darken that up in a second, but let's zoom out here just a little bit. Command J, Command T, right click, flip horizontal, bring this over to the other side, line it up. Command H again and make sure this closes. It's pretty good. And we'll merge that together. Now make sure everything is centered. Pretty good. And I think I can just bump this up actually a little bit. Yeah, that works. And we'll call this behind. And we want to Command J, duplicate it, and go Command U, or press Command U, and where it says lightness, we just want to bump that down. About 50. I don't know why that took so long. But then bring that below, and then use the move tool, click, hold shift, and just drag that down a bit. Somewhere around there works. And then let's hide that guide again. Hopefully you can see that. It blends in with the mountains here, but we'll change that in a second. Yeah. And then let's go to this original behind, double click on it, go gradient overlay. Again, we want dark to light, and just very subtle this time, so maybe single digits. That's pretty good. Click OK, close that up, do a new layer, Alt, click on that layer, and to create a clipping mask, go to the brush tool, and we probably want a smaller size, maybe like 200, and then go to black, and you just want to go across the back of the text where it would be sitting, so there's like a slight shadow going on. Maybe even go a little lower, and maybe decrease the opacity then. I think that's pretty good. Now create a new layer, call this bevel, and leave it there. At the top, select white as your color, have the brush tool selected, but we want to go to a hard brush and a size of maybe 4. I don't know if that's gonna be right, but we'll try it out. Get the pen tool and follow the edge of this behind the text thing. So you just want to follow it like this. Okay, and then once you do that, you can just command click off, make sure all the points work. I can see this one doesn't work, so I'm going to command click it, bump it over, and get that as right on as you can, and then right click, stroke path, make sure you have brush, and click OK, right click delete path, and 4 might have been too thick, so you might want to do 2 pixels, but once you get that, you want to set that to overlay, and boom, we have a nice kind of bevel, and just decrease the opacity to make it a little more subtle. And you can see my lines weren't perfect, I was a little off, so make sure you line it up best you can. And then come behind to the copy of the dark one, create a new layer there, and make that a clipping mask as well. We'll zoom in here, maybe not that far. And we're just gonna do the edges. So you can see this corner here, we want to cut that off with the pen tool, and this you're also gonna have to line up the best you can. And I'm gonna go quick just to show you the gist. but you want to do like this corner here too. The corners opposite then. It's nowhere close. There we go. That might work. And then finally, I'm struggling to see these corners, so this is kind of winging it. But there we go. Command click off then, so none of these are selected. And you can right click fill path, white, click OK, right click delete. So you have these little white bits here, and if you set that to overlay and decrease the opacity just a little bit, it kind of makes it a little more 3D, and you can see the dimensions a bit better, and it just makes it look a lot nicer. And finally, if you double click on that behind layer, you can either do an inner glow, or what I did was just a slight inner shadow, and we'll go exactly 90 degrees and increase the size to, we'll just go like 25. And that might be hard to see because it's dark, but we want to actually brighten this all up. So to do that, we're going to put it all in a group. So select it all, group, call it behind text, create a new layer, alt click, and I'm going to command delete to just fill that layer, and then go command U and just bring the lightness all the way up to make it white. Click OK, set it to overlay, and decrease the opacity somewhere close to where you'd want it. And I just realized how awful this corner looks, but just please ignore that for now. Actually, both these corners look pretty terrible, but you get the gist. And now we can recheck this duplicated text, bring it up into this space here, maybe decrease the size a bit, and we'll actually double click on it and make it a lighter blue like we've been doing, just because we don't want that much pure white, and actually maybe even bluer. That works. And we can actually add a warp to this as well. Right click, warp, arc, maybe go like -4, and yeah, there you go. It's pretty cool. And finally, to two of the last details, we want to add some like chip marks and some texture. So for the chip marks, we just want to do this to the behind the text. So what we're going to do is go and create a new layer, get the soft brush, and similar to what we did with the shooting star, we're just going to pick a size. We'll go 5, might be too big. Actually, definitely is. Let's hit the square bracket. Let's just stick with 4. We'll click, Command T, expand it one way, like that will work. And I'm going to zoom in here, and this is actually too big, so maybe you want to go like 0.2 or 0.3, and bring that down now. Cool, we got something like this. Duplicate that, move it over one, or actually move it over 1 pixel, and press Command I to make it black. Select both of these layers, Command merge them and call this chip or something, and then you can bring that up to say here, maybe put it on a slight angle, set it to overlay, and now you have like a slight chip in the actual back. But you can also do a like a harder angle. So if I duplicate this, bring it over, I could grab the eraser tool, make it pretty small, and erase this top portion, duplicate it, Command T, rotate it, and line it up so it's something like that, so that's more of like a dun-dun instead of straight down. And you can mess around with that. You can make them different sizes, and that just kind of makes the back a little more interesting rather than just a perfectly flat background. But we still want to add a little more. Also, alt click on all those to make sure they're clipping masks, because you don't want them just kind of out in the background. We want to add just some rocky texture to the text and the backing itself. So we can actually group the text and the behind the text into a group, but that's like a little too many groups for me, so I just add this texture twice. which is a texture from my texture pack. If you're interested in this, you can check it out in my store. But all you need is some sort of texture, whether it's rocky, grungy, or whatever. But this is just like a simple rocky texture, and I'm going to bring this on here. Command T, size it up so it fits nicely. Something like that. I'm going to Alt click, set it to overlay, and decrease the opacity. And now it's just a little, it just has a little more texture, looks a little more interesting. And we can duplicate that, bring it to the top of the text group, and do the same thing. Now, this text is very white, so if it's on overlay, you won't be able to see it. So what I'm going to do is just set it to darken, I believe. Yes, and now we can see it a little bit better on the white part of the text, and we can decrease the opacity from there, or you can just make the text less white, maybe make it a little more blue, and yeah, that's pretty good. And then that's basically the text. I also did this burst effect right here, which are simply just a couple lines, and I figure you guys could probably figure that out on your own, and I'm not even sure if I like it for this, so I'm not going to demonstrate that for you. Now before we get to the final touches, I just want to show you how to go about adding social media, because it's fairly easy. So we're gonna actually go to get a icon or whatever, and I gotta sign in, but we want to just grab a logo of some sort, and I'm gonna show you the social media. Grab this Instagram logo, drag it down, resize it, and the social media is fairly easy, and I'll make this about 40 by 40. That works. And right click, rasterize that layer. You can bring in a logo any way you want. I use the flat icon program because it's really easy. You can download it for free and use it for free, but you miss out on icons that you might have to pay for. But I don't pay for it, or you can just use Google. Anyway, once you have your logo in there, or your logos, I didn't change the color of them. I left them as the original color, and double clicked gradient overlay. It's been a common theme for this video, but it looks really nice, and maybe somewhere in the 20-ish percentage. And then inner glow, in a very thin inner glow, like that. So about 3 in size, 40-ish percentage opacity. Click OK, get some text, and click below, type in whatever it is, so instagram.com/that's Qehzy, which you guys should follow, by the way, and bring down the size to about 5, put it underneath that, and maybe make it smaller. Cool, and then you can do that for all your logos. And let me just duplicate this 3 times just so you guys can see what it'll kind of look like. Something like that. And if you want them evenly spaced, then, by the way, I always like to show this in my videos because a lot of people don't know about it, but if I select all the logos here, go to Layer, Distribute, Horizontal Centers, that'll just evenly space them out, and we can do the same thing with the text then as well. Boom. Select all that, Command H to bring up that guide again, make sure it's all centered, and voila, we got some easy social media. Obviously you'd probably want different icons there, but it's all good. Now we just want to finally do the last edits and kind of finishing this off. And what we're going to do is go down here as a final touch, get a gradient map in the adjustments panel, and just select black and white, set it to overlay, and decrease the opacity, probably like 30-ish range, and that will brighten a lot of things up. You can see, wow, now this looks a lot more similar, it's a lot bluer, looks a little better. And now we can add a vibrance, bring up the vibrance, that will just kind of make the blues look a little better. And we can just create a new layer. We can actually do this at the bottom. I'm going to do it at the top though. Get the soft brush tool, again maybe like a 200 pixel size soft brush. Select a blue that's fairly bright, so we'll go all the way like that, and actually maybe a little bigger. Go across the text, set it to screen, decrease the opacity, and there's some more glowing text that might look a little better than the original glow we had on there. And finally, we want to create a new layer. Command delete, Command U, bring the lightness all the way down so it's black, and then go to filter noise, add noise, and you should have something like this. Make the settings 30% Gaussian and check monochromatic at the bottom. Click OK, set it to overlay and about 15%, and that just kind of adds a nice noise to all of this, kind of completes it. And yeah, now that's basically the tutorial, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. You want to go through and touch this up then as well when you're done. See anything that might look weird, like you can see the stars on the moon, that doesn't make much sense. You probably want to go in there and fix that. Anyway, if you did enjoy, drop a like, subscribe for more tutorials, follow me on Twitter at Qehzy, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.